Hey there, and welcome to the Mystic Junkie. My name is Jason, and this is the spin-off of the original show, Mystic Junkies.
News?
So they said that the officer saw a bright light,
Yes.
which we saw, the green flash in the sky. But then the guy said it were a 10-foot tall creature.
Like, they said it. I didn't
Disowning
He's like, that's what they said.
I'm not in on
I'm
this.
still a good father. Don't take my kids away. Like, they're crazy, not me.
You may have heard of that. That was a history of mystery comedy show where we talked about the history of mystery. We talked about weird things, about different ghouls, about different conspiracies, about cults. We talked about all kinds of stuff. And then the show went on a hiatus. But my name is Jason, and I was the producer of that show, and I could not help but want to bring it back because, truthfully, all I really want to do most of the time is talk about weird shit to my friends. And by weird shit, I mean I want to talk about werewolves, vampires, about unicorns. What is happening in the waters? What's happening in the ocean? Are there aliens in the ocean? Are there aliens in the sky? It's fun to talk about. There's so much seriousness happening in the world, and there's a ton of podcasts and radio shows and TV shows all about trying to shape your mind into a certain ideology or whatever. I don't really care. I don't care what direction you go. I don't care which way you vote. But if you want to hang out and talk about weird stuff, you came to the right place because that is all I'm here to do, my friends. So let's buckle up and talk about some weird shit today. The first topic I wanted to cover is something that we all know about because it's all over movies. It is all over TV. It is werewolves. We know of werewolves. I think a lot of people can, when you think of werewolves, you think of something that is a human that is transforming into a beast, wolf-like thing during a full moon. And all of a sudden, a lot of times on TV, it's a teenager when they hit 16 or they hit 18. All of a sudden, they're a wolf now. They've become a wolf, and they're this terrifying creature that is tormenting the town around them. Something interesting, though, is a lot of what we see in movies, a lot of what we see on TV, that is actually a combination of, I guess you could say, a combination of lore from a lot of different countries and a lot of different tribes throughout history that different movies and TVs pulled from to create the imagery that we know of now and what we see. Werewolves in movies and TV give an image of a human that transforms into a wolf-like beast every full moon, a transformation in which is almost always messy and always seemingly painful. If you were to go solely on the werewolf lore of movies, you may have quite a few misconceptions about this centuries-old beast. Movies don't necessarily get it wrong, but like I said, they don't always get it right either. Usually movies and shows, we are convinced, are the most accurate telling of something, but really what we see is actually a combination, like I was saying, of things to make it more, get the razzle-dazzle out, make it a little sexier. And that goes from how it happens and to the initial physical transformation that follows varies from movie to movie, which means that every country has a different idea of how someone becomes a werewolf and then how someone then shape shifts into a werewolf. Something that's very important to know before we continue, that pretty much this whole entire episode is going to be about the transformation, shape-shifting, common misconceptions of that, and then, like, what is it actually? I think through my research, I'm not an expert on anything, but through my research, I do like to come up with a conclusion of what is it that people are talking about, what is it that people are seeing, is there actually something to this, or again, is this just a made-up story that is just passed down from generation to generation? But something to know is there's a term called lycanthropy, and this term lycanthropy is the supernatural ability to shapeshift into a wolf, and this is recounted in folk tales essentially throughout time. There's a lot of different ways that movies like to say that the cause of the change is happening. We all know the full moon. We all know that when a werewolf is around a full moon, or the human is around a full moon, they then transform into a werewolf. That's actually a European folklore that came from Europe, and the movies have really adapted that into a main thing. But there are also a lot of other ways that you'll see in movies that they do this transformation. There's in a couple movies, there's drinking from a charmed cup. That's actually from Norse mythology. There's also like magical ointment, which that's a Western European Slavic folklore. And a lot of times with this magical ointment, it was actually like a hallucinogenic that made people crazy. Then there's also like the changing back. Like, how is that happening? A lot of different countries talk about how when you change back, there's like a wolfskin belt around your waist that you physically take off, and then you'll transform back. There's another one you'll see in a lot of TV shows because it's like sexy, obviously. Bathe in running water, and then when you bathe in running water, you're no longer a wolf. You transform back. You're a human, whatever. And then there's at will. Those are said to be, I guess, the most powerful in movies and lore, that you can just change back whenever you really want to. That seems pretty convenient. Like, I gotta go for a marathon run, and I'm gonna turn into a wolf real quick. Just for the run, I gotta get my numbers. I don't know. There's a lot of stories about how to kill a wolf. We're gonna get into that. We're gonna get a little further into that, or unalive a werewolf. And you always see on TV that you need a silver bullet. Silver is the way. So that's what we see on TV. That's our basic description. You know, when you see a wolf, you know you're going to see some of those things. But I would really like to get into the origins of werewolf folklore and the tales that movies have adopted, and like where did all of this actually come from. Over 3,000 years ago, a migrating Indo-European tribe left their homeland of southern Russia and spread across Europe. They later became known as Celtic tribes, Germanic tribes, Italic tribes, Greek, Slavic, Baltic, and so much more. There's also a group of people that entered parts of Asia and became known as the Hittite tribe, or the Hittite Empire, and that later became Turkey. And then the Persian North India, they also migrated over there. So you have all these people that came from one location that have stories of this specific thing, and then now they're migrating across the world, and they're taking that story with them, and they're changing it based upon what cultures are developing in the region that they're in. And these stories are said to be handed down and written by warriors in training during their rituals. And the concept of a werewolf comes actually from a man who participates in these rituals and essentially loses control and becomes a beast. So that's why werewolves are seen not as like puppies, but beasts, because these warriors, these fighters, are participating in this situation, and they are hurting people, they're killing people, and they are causing some serious issues. Every tribe that came from southern Russia actually has a word that translates to wolf or outlaw, which I thought outlaw was really interesting. That really kind of goes back to an individual who is losing control and is outside of the law, is just out to hurt people. Excuse my pronunciations of these words. I am going to do my best. If I do stuff wrong and you know how to pronounce it, please put it in the comments below and correct me. I'm here to learn. I don't want to pretend like I know things that I don't know. So I'm just going to go down the list. Vark is an Indo-European word for wolf or outlaw. Vrikas, that's a Sanskrit word. Varka, Old Persian word. Warg is a German. Vargur, Old Norse word. Velku, Old Common Slavic. And Hirkas that's Hitty, or like I said, later became Turkey. So these are all words that are used to refer to this wolf, beast, outlaw, this individual who is portraying traits of a wolf or a beast and is hurting people. There are many accounts from tribes all over the world doing these ritualistic drug ceremonies to shapeshift, and these warriors take years to learn how to become a skilled transformer, starting with like hallucinations, hypnotism, and then even magic to make them into this thing. And I have this book here. It's all about monsters, and I really wanted to read a little section on basically like shape-shifting and what exactly we're talking about of shape-shifting. And it says, accounts of the method of transformation vary widely in the records, changing form nearly as readily as werewolves themselves. The idea that the transformation happens by itself at the full moon is a notion made famous by a number of horror films. Like I was saying, it can be found in werewolf folklore all over Europe, but it's not the only explanation. Norse werewolves, according to the 16th century historian Olaus Magnus, murmured a charm over a cup or ale, then drank it. So that's how Norse werewolves happened. It's like a magical, like I said, a magical charm, a magical saying or whatever, and then they drink it, and then they become a wolf. And in Western Europe and among the Slavic people of the same period, the process involved a magical ointment all over the body, and then downing a wolf's pellet or a belt made of wolfskin. So I think it says donning, not downing. So donning, putting it on. There are many records of this happening all throughout history, and there just seems to be a lot of different definitions. It goes on further to talk about all the different types of drugs that are in this hallucinogenic. So you know these drugs as belladonna, mockshud, henbane, and other like flying ointments that they're called. And it's essentially, like they say, it's used by medieval witches. And it really sounds like some of these accounts are talking about hallucinations. And they are seeing themselves as something different. But again, when you go further into this, you'll find that there are even more accounts of not just wolves. There are different accounts of bears and other creatures too. So the two main forms you're going to hear of the most, and you can even hear so there is a time period before the fall of Rome, and my research has kind of shown that there are even stories from monks, Icelandic monks, of shapeshifters, and they would call them, again, please excuse my pronunciation on this, Volsunga Thaga. And this meant that someone could turn into either a wolf or a bear. But the thing about that is when you look into other areas, you'll find that different countries all over the world have stories of all kinds of animals. So there are said to be shapeshifters in North folklore that turn into swans and otters and salmons. And I'm not going to lie to you, the concept of a were-swan or a were-otter, honestly, otters are kind of mean at times, so that may not be far off, period. Or like a were-salmon, it's just a really funny concept to think of. You eat all this, the story goes that you eat all this salmon, and then it affects people. I don't know, I just think that's kind of a funny thought. There's a really interesting story that I found throughout my research about a Danish king by the name of Bodbar Bjarki, and he was known as a great bear shapeshifter, or The Great Berserker. So a berserker is a individual who shapeshifts into a bear, and it's actually where the concept of going berserk comes from. I think we probably all said that when we were a kid, like when we were being really intense about something, we're gonna go berserk and we're going to get this taken care of. So that is, or someone went berserk and they lost their shit, and you can't deal with them anymore. So that's where it's from. And the stories are kind of interesting because it really kind of opened up a whole different section of shape-shifting that I didn't even know was a thing. So the stories of Bodbar say that he would meditate in his tent during battle, and then all of a sudden a bear would appear and tear apart his enemies. Holy shit. Holy shit. The thought of like the guy who's leading your army is just like meditating in the tent, and all of a sudden a giant ass bear shows up, and you just trying to fight that. I mean, 100 men versus one bear, I don't know. Instead of one gorilla. That's pretty crazy. The Native Americans, the west of Mississippi, more specifically the Navajos, they actually have a lot of stories of werewolves, but we know them as skinwalkers, and we'll eventually do an episode. We did an episode on Mystic Junkies before about that, but I really would like to get into that a little more, because like Skinwalker Ranch, and there's a lot of other places and people who talk about seeing these skinwalkers, and I just kind of like, let's get to the bottom of that. I want to figure out what that is. But the Navajos talk about a skinwalker. It is pronounced, again, bear with me, Yenaalalloosh. I'll put the spelling at the bottom of the screen here, and you can go and pronounce that. Yenaalalloosh is what it says, but it's essentially a skinwalker. And then in central Mexico, there are also stories of like shapeshifters that are dogs, donkeys, wild turkeys. The thing about this though is these shapeshifters are said to not be able to kill anything, and can only cause issues around the neighborhood. So they're just like a really bad pest who just won't leave you alone or leave your shit alone. And you got your were turkeys running around gobbling up shit and causing problems, and it's a real issue. I wanted to get into a little more of the basics of shapeshifting, because I keep talking about shapeshifting. I've told you about, like, I've read a passage that told you about the different stories or the different descriptions of what shapeshifting is, and I wanted to really kind of break down for you what I mean when I'm saying shapeshifting, because the concept that an individual is like morphine, like this body, for instance, this body like changes into a werewolf, like you see in movies where the jaws will change and the hands will get bigger and then the teeth will get bigger. Isn't what's actually happening. In order to go further, I wanted to get into the basics of what shape-shifting actually is. I read these accounts, like I said, but in order to understand what this shape-shifting is, you have to understand the different bodies that you have as a human. And some of this may sound familiar to you if you're a meditator, or you're an astral projector, or you're just overall into mysticism. You've heard of a lot of this stuff. And what I wanted to do was kind of get a better understanding of what this stuff meant to werewolves, and like try to figure out what's happening here. So it really seems like this is probably the most accurate description of what's going on here. If you believe in this stuff, it really seems like this could be it. And there are 5 different types of bodies that we have as humans. We have our etheric body, we have our astral body, we have our mental body, we have our spiritual body, and then we have our material body, or our physical body. So these are different planes that the world, our different electric magnetic fields have that our different energies play on. And as humans, we are electricity, so we have different energy to us, and we react to the world around us and the energy that is being put onto us in certain ways, and it varies from person to person. Again, that'll be an episode in its own. But these 5 bodies are really important, and it's really important to know the difference between astral projection, which is what you hear all the time, and there's etheric projection. These are 2 different concepts, but sometimes they get mixed up when we're talking about shape-shifting and just meditating in projection, period. So I really wanted to talk about which is which and which kind of relates to being a werewolf. So everyone talks about astral projection a lot, which that is your 3 higher bodies leave behind your 2 lower bodies, and you travel into the astral realm. If you're a meditator, if you meditate, if you go into these different states, you know this as the I am light scenario. The problem with that is you're just light. I don't want to say just light, because that's the problem with that is you're only light. There's no grass, there's no robustness to it. You're not anything except for light, and you can't be seen by everything. And then there's etheric projection, which is our main focus today, which that is where your etheric body, remember we have 5 different bodies and etheric is one of them, and that actually splits, and you're leaving part of it back with your body, which is you're meditating. So that's the physical form that people are seeing, like when Bodbar is meditating in his tent, and then there is a second form when you're split, and this acts as your vehicle to travel the outside etheric realm. And this is essentially what people use to project and create an almost physical animal form that manifests, and it does the will of the projector. So the individual who's meditating forms this, and this takes a lot of practice. From my understanding, it takes a long time to figure this out, but this is something that different cultures and warriors have used or have said to have used all throughout history, because it's more effective. And the further I got into this, it's animal body of transformation is what it's technically called, and it falls under a magical skill. So something you may not be aware of, or you are if you're tuning in as a mystic, you know there's an entire culture of wizards, magicians, people who are studying all of this stuff and who are putting it into practice. And this lore is actually one of the world's oldest surviving magic skills. And it's actually said to be one of the most useful skills in a magician's toolkit. You take the power of the animal you're shape-shifting into. So you can see why people like to shape-shift into wolves or bears, because those are aggressive, you get what you want, they can hurt people, and you can take control of the situation. But you can also like shape-shift into a bird and fly. You can shape-shift into a lizard and climb a tree, and you could eat bugs if you wanted to. I don't know what you're about. But you're taking the major skill of whatever you're shape-shifting into, and you're using it at your will. It's just more robust than astral projecting, because again, with astral projecting, you're light, and with this, you're essentially a fully formed animal. And I think we should talk about what the lore says about what actually is happening when you're transforming. So what we've been talking about is the out-of-body experience. So essentially the human is asleep or meditating, and they are forming with their etheric body. They are forming a new body that is an animal that they are then using to do what they want to do. And then there are a couple other time periods. So the Middle Ages spoke of this. Norse lore talks about this. And it's the only way you can actually harm an individual if you do it this way. It's a magical animal shell. So instead of your body is transforming, like changing, Your bones are breaking, your skin is growing hair, and things are moving around. You're instead of that, you're putting on a shell. You're putting on a coat that is another animal, and you are actually inside of that animal shell. And like I said, you can actually hurt people that way, and that seems to be like the Norse lore, the Middle Ages. When you hear a lot of stories of the Middle Ages of like beasts and wolves taking control, or not taking control, but taking kids, or taking old women, or like taking people off the streets and killing them, and then you find them in the woods. Like you heard of that all the time. If you grew up and if you're growing up and you were interested in that type of stuff like I was, the Middle Ages was a time period where there was a lot of beasts. But if you look at the history, there was also like a huge population of wolves that hadn't been managed at that time, and then there's cities popping up, and there's just a lot going on. But at the time, they talked about that's what was happening with their wolves, that people or a crazy person in town was essentially putting on a suit of a wolf and just killing people, eating people, and hurting people. And that seems to be where it all comes from. It's there's a conflict happening, or there are people who are starting to go missing, and people are creating stories, or maybe there were sightings of wolves or bears or beasts around, and maybe that's actually what was happening. Like a wolf was actually taking people, or a bear was actually taking people, or someone was etheric projecting and becoming a wolf or a bear or whatever. So that seems to be where it all comes from. Like 3,000 years ago, people from southern Russia took this lore, and it's gone all over the world. And we're in the United States. We're in Sarasota, Florida, and we're talking about it. So it's really made its way over. So what I want to do next is I want to just like run down the list and tell you guys some quick things and kind of explain why things are what they are. There are two major things that you hear about in every single movie, TV, story, whatever, that the moon is why you're transforming. And if you go down the animal body of transformation route, like it's a magical skill that these warriors are learning, it's a timeless old skill. The reason why the moon is doing this is because the moon governs the tides, and they say that the etheric energy in the spiritus mundi, or subtle body of Earth, are at the highest during a full moon. So, essentially, they're saying that there's more energies. There's energy happening around the Earth, and there is a layer of Earth's energy that has etheric energies going on, and they are at their strongest at a full moon. So if you are going to tap into those and pull and create something, you're going to be able to do that the easiest during a full moon. So kind of different from what you see in movies. Like it's like they can't control it. Like a full moon happens and they're like, oh crap, oh shit, I gotta tie myself to a pole or chain myself up into a room. You can't come see me, girlfriend, I will eat you. And it seems to be like it's a choice, like you transform at that time because that's when you're the most powerful. Another thing is that you hear of is harming a werewolf, you hear of silver. And there's actually a reason why that you always hear that silver is the best way to do it. Essentially, any metal could work because metal affects the ethereal body. And the reason why that happens is because metal is highly conductive. Well, not all metal is highly conductive, but silver is essentially the most highly conductive metal. And again, we're talking about energies. Everything is energy after all. And you can conduct energy with silver, and you can essentially defeat or break apart or destroy whatever this etheric being with a highly conductive metal And the best way to do that is by sticking it, from my understanding, in the middle of the chest. And it's crazy because I was looking, and the more I looked into it, it really, the silver bullet method that we see in movies and TVs really kind of is overkill. Because this body is, it will break apart with like a flick or a poke of a silver, like 3 to 6 inch pole with a silver tip, and you could just poke in and it's gonna break apart. If you use a silver bullet, it like I said, it could be overkill. Do you have a werewolf problem? After learning all this stuff, could it be? Or are you just making this up? Like, is it a real problem, or is it actually happening? So, a lot of times, werewolves are commonly mistaken as nature spirits. So there's all kinds of different spirits out there, energies, lots of different things happening. We'll actually get into that. I'd like to do a whole episode on Fae and the things that happen in the woods, and why woods throughout history have been so scary. It's not just the dark leaves and the wind. There's a lot of things in the woods, and humans have been gravitating away from the woods for a long time because humans as a creature have found that the woods are a scary place. And a lot of times werewolves are mistaken as fae or nature spirits. Also ordinary animals. Most likely what you're seeing in the woods or around your house is probably a sick or a rabid animal. And another thing to really check is, where are you? Like, if you're in Europe, there was a time period, especially like Eastern Europe and like Slavic countries, where this was a main focus of theirs, and they were just killing wolves. They were killing anything that they could. If it was a beast, they were out there killing it. So there's a relatively low chance that you're going to actually see anything. But what I found that I thought was very, very interesting was in the western half of the Americas, you actually have a really high chance of seeing a skinwalker, a werewolf, or something that you can't quite explain. And if you find yourself in this region, you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do, I would recommend going over these 6 signs and ask yourself, is this what's happening? One or more extinct animals are sighted. So if you see something that is supposed to be extinct and it is not, start asking yourself what that is. There are shape-shifting traditions heavily present in the area, so people have been talking about this for a long time happening there. Learn more about that, read into that, and see what you can do. Animal with these traditions behaviors. So like if you're reading into it more and you're comparing the behavior of this animal that you're seeing and it displays the traits of these traditions, then you may be getting closer to an answer there, and maybe it is. It's very smart, it's very cunning, it's a trickster, and it loves money and valuables. Like, it clearly has a motivation. It's trying to take valuables from you, or it's trying to take things from you, kind of causing problems in a sense of trying to gain something from whatever it's messing with. Also, if you've tried to like hit it with a stick, like non-metal objects, they're ineffective. So if like you've been trying to shoo this away, you do different traps, I don't know, that are non-metal, you spray it with water, you spray it with a poison, or you try to just whatever, and it's not working, there could be something there. And then other physiological, criminological, or medical explanations are ruled out. So there's literally no other option. It's this. And then make sure you check the moon and the date of the sighting. Are they together? If all these things line up, you could be dealing with a werewolf. Another thing to know, like, what do you do if you're actually running into a werewolf? Nothing. Keep moving. Get out of there. Leave. If they attack, I hope you know some magic self-defense, or you have that silver stick with you. But again, silver bullets are extreme. Like, you don't need to shoot. Because here's the thing. Let's use common sense here. It's probably not a werewolf. So just get out of there. Don't mess with a rabid animal. Don't mess with a rabid creature. Don't mess with a mad, angry creature, whatever. And if it is, and you have to fight for yourself and fight for your safety, aim for the center of the body. But be warned, if you injure this thing it will turn back into a human, and if it dies, you will go to jail, because that is illegal. So go back to 1, do nothing, and just get out of there. Avoid that at all costs. Avoid werewolves at all costs. Don't go trying to hunt them. Don't go try to do anything. You'll go to jail. It doesn't work out. It's not gonna be good. There's been lots of sightings of werewolves, skinwalkers, creatures all over the world, and I don't think it's gonna go away anytime soon. I think as people continue to go on without any answers, people are going to be asking more questions. They want to know what it is. And I think there is a whole world that mainstream society doesn't even know that's happening right in front of them at all times. And with this show, I would really like to talk more about that. And I hope you got something out of this makeshift teaching of werewolves. Werewolves are fun. I don't think that when I was a kid I was like, if I could be a vampire or a werewolf, I would choose a werewolf. These days, I don't know. I don't know what I would choose, but all I know is there's a lot of shit happening with these transformations. There's a lot of ways that it can go out of control, and just like any other hallucinogenic, you should use that responsibly. And it sounds like if you don't use your werewolf hallucinogenic responsibly, you're gonna go a little crazy and you're gonna become a problem in town. So I'd say avoid that. Thank you, my friends, for joining me on this quest of learning about werewolves, what not to do when you see one, and how the movies kind of didn't really get it right, or kind of did get it right. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever had a sighting of one of these things? I have never experienced anything. I've spent a lot of time in the woods growing up. I've been a lot of different places. I've never run into a werewolf, run into coyotes. Maybe it's a were-coyote. I don't know. But I meditate. Never thought that it could be an option to turn into something like this. Maybe that's the next step. Been meditating for 12 years now. Maybe the next step is to turn into a were-dog, a were-golden retriever. I think I could do something with that. Really get more smiles and tail wags out there. Every full moon, I'm out here to cuddle like a golden retriever. Thank you so much for joining. If you liked this episode, please make sure that you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.